Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having an amazing Friday. My name is Natasha Daniel, and I am the manager of workforce development at Efficiency Canada. Thank you so much for joining us for a special Discovery EE this week as we celebrate our launch of Black Futures Month. I'm facilitating today from Toronto. Toronto actually originates from the Mohawk word Toronto, meaning the place in the water where the trees are standing, which is also said to refer to the wooden stakes that were used as fishing weirs in the narrows of local river systems by both the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat peoples. So many of the prominent streets that we actually walk on today in downtown Toronto, they were built upon the actual original portage trails used by the Indigenous peoples for many thousands of years. And just like that, much of the work that we do in energy and energy efficiency is really built off of the knowledge and sustainable practices of Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. So, for those of you who are joining us here for the first time, we host Discovery EE sessions every 2 weeks, just like this right here. And these sessions are meant to bring the sector and the people interested in energy efficiency together so that we can learn more. We try to highlight new research, findings from pilots, relevant topics, and innovations. Today, we're launching Ruvi Mugara's Day in the Life campaign. What is a day in the life? It features real people in real energy efficient work environments. And it really started as a communications campaign to showcase a range of professionals from engineers to architects, retrofitters, tradespeople, building science, academics, and many more. We will be releasing Ruvi's video next Friday for Valentine's Day, sticking to our theme of Black Futures Month. And we like to show a personal and professional side of the sector that we've never seen before. So it's an exciting and a timely tool to attract new and mid-career professionals to energy efficiency. So stay tuned on all of our social media, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for all of those updates. Okay, so now let's get to what we've all been waiting for. Communications is where Ruvi Mugara's impact truly comes to life. As director of projects at Thinkwell Shift, a resource conservation company focused on behavior change in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Ruvi redefines program success by ensuring benefits are not just measured in dollars saved or emissions cut, but in how effectively they resonate with the public. Ruvi's mission centers on empowering historically excluded people to see themselves as a part of the solution. From African Nova Scotian communities to remote fishing communities to young people navigating climate anxiety, Ruvi works to demystify the energy efficiency sector for those who may feel it's out of reach. Today at Thinkwell Shift in Halifax, Ruvi supports program managers with implementation, strategic advancement, and translating the energy transition in programs such as New Brunswick Power Navigators, Green Schools Nova Scotia, and the Efficient Production Installation Service, driving innovation and sustainability in the Atlantic provinces. So let's give a big virtual round of applause for Ruvi. Yay! We can hear it all. It's amazing. Ruvi, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Natasha. How are you today?
It's amazing. I'm trying to get over this cold right now. So as long as I don't have some kind of coughing fit through this 1 hour session, we're good to go. But it's so exciting to just off the heels of coming back from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and really coming into Think Shift and shooting your campaign. I think it's a great time to have this conversation, especially for Black Futures Month. So let's get into it. First question, right off the bat. If somebody gave you a green magic wand, what would you wish for when it comes to advancing climate sustainability, as well as any kind of net zero solutions in the built environment?
That's a good question, Natasha. Thank you for asking. So, if I was to get a wand, I would definitely wish for more programs that are more accessible for the regular folks out there. I find the biggest hurdle we have in this energy transition is that we who work in the industry know all the ins and outs. We know where we're headed. We know what the 2030, 2050 goals are for Canada, but we're not communicating it very well with the general folks, which makes it seem like it's such a big hurdle. And a lot of people are nervous about it and they're just afraid because they don't know what we're trying to do. So I would definitely start working on some accessibility out there for people so that they know what they're walking into. It's actually really simple if we think about it. It's a lot of technical jargon out there, but it's so simple. And that's something our organization was able to do quite well. We're able to simplify a lot of the jargon. And so if I had a wand, definitely would just wave it all over Canada and I would fix it all. And people would just be like, okay, got it. That's what you're trying to say.
They'd be taking in all that fairy dust. "Oh, these are the benefits of net zero and deep energy retrofits in my home." But aside from the humor of it, Ruvi, you're absolutely correct. All the information that we have right now about the benefits of building net zero, about Canada's sustainable development plans, all the information, all the research, and all the stats are out there for the most part, right? And how this will help clean up air and what's going on in Europe and how we can take models from there and and make it more accessible in North America. But the heart of it is that the Canadian public energy efficiency still remains to have a question mark in the public
Hmm.
imagination.
Hmm. I completely agree.
Eyes start to roll over
Hmm.
when we start talking about decarbonization. And so if we are to create that behavior change, then you're right. There has to be much more accessible language. And we can't just be nerding out amongst each other, patting ourselves
Hmm.
on the back, which is important as well, because the work that we do is really difficult. But translators are more needed now than ever,
100%.
right?
100%. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your background in psychology and
Mhm.
how relevant that has become to your work in behavior change and at Thinkwell Shift. I think the first thing that's really interesting, let's go to just how you even came into the sector. I find most people that I ask, it's sort of an accident. They may have been, they were happened to be in university and there was free pizza and they went in and there was a professor talking about energy efficiency and they got hooked. So how
Mhm.
did you make your transition into the sector?
Yeah, mine was actually much later than that. So my transition into the energy efficiency sector was unexpected but deeply rewarding. With my psychology background, I initially worked with adults with intellectual disabilities, which reinforced my passion for engaging with people and being part of their growth. After becoming a mother to a child with special needs, I needed a career pivot that offered stability while still aligning with my strengths in communication and engagement. So I came across an opportunity with Green Schools Nova Scotia, and despite not having an environmental background, which would have made me consider actually applying, but I still went for it. I applied because I knew I could connect with people, especially youth. My facilitation skills and experience working with children helped me land the role. Once I was in, I embraced the learning curve and realized that at its core, energy efficiency is about behavior change, which directly ties back to my background in psychology. That connection kept me engaged and allowed me to thrive in this field. And that's how I ended up here. Yeah, it was like just found a job posting, applied.
That's amazing. And just like that, like how you said that your psychology background helps you, what kind of strategies do you feel that you've been able to uniquely approach in your work because of your background?
I would say a lot of the strategies that I've been able to approach because of my background is just the like communicating with people and breaking down those like big technical things, the jargon around it, and making it a lot simpler for people to understand. And I also meet people where they're at, which is something Thinkwell Shift says all the time on our website. We say we meet people where they're at. We're creating change through choice. So that's what we do. We listen to the audience. What do they know about energy efficiency? Have they heard of it before? Where are they at in their journey? And we're applauding people regardless of where they're at in the journey. So if all they know about energy efficiency is that they need to turn off the lights to save some money on their power bills, listen, we are clapping hands for you. You are doing it. Encore, celebration. Every step is a step in the right direction. So it's all about communicating and celebrating the small wins as well with our general audience.
That's great. What do you feel has really encouraged people to, especially being from and doing work in the Atlantic provinces? There, of course, is a more oil-based economy and there's more demand in that field. So what has worked for you guys in helping change people's behavior or change their mindset? What do you find has helped take somebody from not knowing anything about energy efficiency to all of a sudden wanting to do a deep
Mhm.
energy retrofit, let's say?
I would say the most effective strategies involve meeting people where they are and making energy efficiency feel accessible, like I said earlier. So, three key approaches that have worked well for us are relatable messaging. So, instead of using technical jargon, we focus on real life impacts, Saving money, for example, on your power bills, creating comfortable homes. Everybody wants their home to be comfortable, and making small, manageable changes. Hands-on engagement is another one. Whether it's we're going into schools, talking to youth with presentations through Green Schools, we're in the home installing some energy efficient products, or we're in the communities talking to people as they just go about their business. People engage more when they can see and experience the benefits firsthand. The last thing is social influence and storytelling. People are more likely to adopt habits when they see others like them doing the exact same thing. We highlight community stories to normalize energy efficient behavior. So we always give examples. We are in a lot of rural Nova Scotia here in Canada. And so we'll be talking about, hey, did you know there's a lady down in Yarmouth? There's a lady down in Digby. And we give real life examples of people we've actually worked with that have seen an impact through their behavior change with energy efficiency.
Absolutely. I think for some communities, especially those who are rural, don't see themselves as a part of this sort of new age electric energy efficiency world. And so a lot of ways people feel like I don't see myself as being a part of something. So asking me to adopt to something that I don't actually see myself in, which is why representation is so important. And I think you spoke on that quite well. Raphael from the chat said he would identify the low hanging fruits. This was exactly what you said, Ruvi, as well, with the lower heating bills, lower electricity, the time of use rates, replacing instant electric heaters by tank ones. So thanks, Raphael, for that suggestion as well. And Jessica also said, I love this messaging, Ruvi. Shaming people or striving for some ecological performance perfection does not work. Let's go to, we see ourselves in a time where politically there's so much happening that's in flux. And Canada tends to take on the trends that are south of the border. There's a lot of things that have rolled out in the past couple months that make a lot of people in the sector nervous. And to be honest, I think I might even use the D word that there's a slight depression when you speak to people right now in our sector about the future of it. And Ruby, one thing that I see in you that I admire so much is the fact that you have such a positive demeanor in the way that you approach this. And a lot of people working in the sector for this long, especially doing customer based work where you're constantly dealing with the average consumer, one could feel a little bit bitter at the end of it sometimes, right? That people are not getting it or they're not adapting fast enough. How do you keep your positive demeanor in this work when so many people right now feel totally burnt out?
You know what? I would say I 100% agree with you. The biggest challenge is overcoming the resistance to change, which often comes from misinformation or habits that feel too ingrained to shift. So if people are like, man, I've been doing this for 15 years, you can't change me. I understand. And like I said, we're meeting people where they're at. So we focus on benefits, not just the problem, right? A lot of other industries are focusing on the problem and how to fix the problem, but there's some benefits that you can tie into it. So people respond more to here's how you can save money than if we were to say stop wasting energy. Do you see the difference there? People buy into something that brings them some comfort as well, not necessarily being shamed. We highlight easy wins, small changes like switching to LED bulbs or adjusting thermostat settings. They feel doable and encourage bigger commitments later. So if people can start with just like what was said earlier by Raphael, low hanging fruit, they're willing to then move on to bigger things. It's like anything else in life. A kid will start on a tricycle, then move with the little wheels off and get on the bike. We got to start with what we can achieve first and then move up. And we have to stay patient and persistent. Behavior change is not instant. It takes ongoing conversations, trust building, and reinforcement over time. And the leaders in the sector need to be patient with the regular consumers out there because this is not new to us, but it is still new to them.
And so also what I'm hearing from you too is long-term engagement is the name of the game.
Mhm.
Right? And I think coming into the sector thinking that you're gonna change something in your two-year contract, which you could possibly do within your organization, but the fact that the Canadian public hasn't completely changed in that two-year contract that you're there, that should not take you away, right, from the importance of the work that we're doing. And for a lot of us in energy efficiency, it's amazing right now. We see ourselves from a workforce standpoint. If you look at that, it's actually on a rise, right?
Mhm.
And it's about to get into more of a boom. So there are different parts of our sector. There's still quite a positive rapport and narrative when you look at different parts of our sector. So I think it's important to balance that right now during these kind of turbulent times, right? You have a program, Green Schools Nova Scotia, which focuses
Mhm,
on engaging youth. What role do young people play in shaping a sustainable future? It seems as though sustainability and the idea of going green has taken a backseat with Gen Z and millennials, and obviously the economy, the prices of food, basic accommodations, all of these things affect where energy efficiency falls in terms of the public's interest in it. And how
mhm.
big of an issue is it? And how much do we want our politicians to advocate for this? So what do you see happening right now in the Green Schools program?
You know what? Young people play a crucial role because they're future decision makers, but they also are powerful influences today. So a lot of the youth we're speaking to, it's just like I said, it's the same with adults, it's the same with youth. It's celebrating the small wins. When we enter a school as green schools and we're there to engage with the youth, we want to ask them, what have you been doing in the classroom that you want to showcase to us? What are you proud of as a class? And they'll say, you know what? We're picking up litter outside. It might not necessarily link specifically to energy efficiency, but we're going to celebrate with that classroom because they already understand the environment and their impact on the environment. And that all ties into sustainability. So we want to make sure we celebrate the small wins as well as the big wins. They bring fresh perspectives, challenge outdated systems, and push for accountability in ways previous generations didn't. The youth of today are like asking us the difficult questions, and we need to listen and give them an opportunity to speak up. It's true that some may feel disengaged from sustainability, but I believe that because of the messaging often focuses on sacrifice rather than empowerment, that is the problem. We need to shift the narrative to show how sustainability is about creating a better, more equitable future, one that includes innovation, job opportunities, and improved quality of life. When we make sustainability personable and action, younger generations will re-engage. We have a program through Green Schools called Green Careers, where we're talking to youth grade 9 to 12, starting to get them to think about a career in the green energy sector and thinking about green buildings, for example. A lot of youth don't even know what's out there for jobs. And so letting them starting to think about, okay, this is something I could see myself doing. That's where we get them. See that they can actually not only do it at home, but do it as a career as well.
That's amazing, Ruvi, that kind of work, because I think a lot of the students who are maybe even graduating right now and about to attend college or post-secondary in some way or join a trades college or program, like you said, their guidance counselor is actually not equipped to be able to tell them that there's a
Mhm,
plethora of jobs that are coming out in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years, in the next 20 years. And these are the kind of skills that we're going to need Canadians to have in order for us to flourish, right? As a sort of competitive, clean energy economy. And so it's
mhm.
amazing that you guys are able to do that in your programs. I was wondering if you wanted to maybe talk about some of the other programs that you run at Thinkwell Shift as well.
Sure. So we work with a lot of utilities. And so one of the programs we run here in Nova Scotia as well is under Efficiency Nova Scotia, just like the Green Schools program is under Efficiency Nova Scotia. We also run the Efficient Product Installation Service, which is just going into people's homes. It's completely free, which is awesome. Like you said, this economy, things are tight. People are trying to save every single penny. So it's awesome to have someone come in your home completely free of charge, comes in, changes out some old incandescent bulbs, gives you some free LED bulbs. We have smart thermostats. We have tank wraps for hot water tanks. We have pipe wrap and so much more. So imagine someone coming in for an hour, able to do that for you. Another plus that I always like to mention is not only are they giving you free energy efficient product, they're also able to help you clean out some of those like fixtures. Nobody really thinks of those fixtures, right? So imagine if someone comes in and is going around your house, unscrewing light fixtures, cleaning them out for you. And it's just like a free cleaning service as well. So it's pretty awesome. And I like that because it's just like an extra tie in into energy efficiency, another plus. Another one we have is the New Brunswick Power Navigators. So this one we are working with New Brunswick Power, and we're able to work with homeowners as well as some small businesses to get them to start understanding their deep energy retrofit journeys, talking about different ways to finance those journeys through the Canada Greener Homes Loan for example, for residents. And then we're also working with businesses so they can access as much rebates as possible, so they can do as much as possible so that the business is using less energy, which is super exciting. I get jazzed about this stuff.
Me too. I'm like, "Hey, are there any Nova Scotians out there? You better take advantage of this right now. Go sign up." Go to how can they actually do that? Would they go to the Thinkwell Shifts? Would they go to your website?
Yeah, they can check out thinkwellshift.ca, and a lot of the programs we are running, they can find them there, or they can also go to Efficiency Nova Scotia's website or New Brunswick Power's website as well.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Speaking of that, I'm like, "Yes, I do need to clean out my own." Have my own house cleaning to do as well. Um, let's get a little bit into the equitable transition, right? I think the just
Mhm,
transition, a lot of some of the terminology we spoke on that we've been using regarding climate change or regarding sustainability have actually garnered fear sometimes in the Canadian
mhm,
public that there's this transformation or there's this change that's about to take place that they are not ready for. And so in a lot of ways, it's nice to look at this as an equitable transition, right? That no one is going to be
mhm.
left behind when we do this. With that said, how do you see equity and inclusion playing a role in Canada's transition to a clean energy future?
So, a just transition means making clean energy accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford it. All right. Equity must be at the center of energy efficiency efforts, whether that's through free energy efficiency programs like the efficient product installation service we do for lower income households, for example, diverse hiring practices, or ensuring that Indigenous and historically marginalized communities have a seat at the table. So having people who look like you and I, Natasha, at the table is absolutely important. If we don't address these gaps, the clean energy transition risks deepening existing inequalities. Because you know what? You and I have different understanding from our culture and our historical backgrounds that impact certain hurdles that our communities might face. For example, most Africans, I'm from an African background, we're coming from communities that we don't always have access to running water, clean running water all the time. So sometimes, a lot of the times, we're coming into our homes, we're boiling water in a kettle so that I can keep it in the fridge. I forget the boiled water in the kettle and I dump it out. These are like just things that I did that were part of my behavior ingrained from another place that I came from. But I come here to Canada and I realize, okay, the water is clean and I can drink it. But why is it such a hurdle for me to overcome to just turn on the faucet, drink the water? Why do I still need to boil that water to drink it? So having me at the table to explain to the decision makers is super important so they can understand people are not just being difficult. There's a lot that stems from that sort of being worried, being afraid to change, that behavior change element. And so having us at the table and giving us an opportunity to speak about our experiences that impact all of this is super important. Otherwise, we're just going around in circles.
Wow, there was so much you said there that I want to unpack. Yes, and somebody else said in the chat, they're like, such a good point, Ruvi. I think what we're getting at here is the idiosyncrasies that we have, like you said, that are ingrained into us, right?
Mhm,
And the fact that you've had to transition from a different culture, right, and a different way of doing things, even with water consumption, you have that built-in kind of patience, right? And you talked about that as well, how having children on the spectrum, working with adults with special needs has brought this empathetic lens to how you see things,
mhm.
right? And so it's not that equity is a nice cherry on top of the cake. It's gotta be a part of the recipe. And just to give a little bit of my experience as well, but I think it was a huge shock for me to come from a different sector, to come from the publishing world, to come from an arts and culture sector, and to see the lack of diversity in energy efficiency. And when we talk about that, we're being very kind. In fact, our sector sucks in it. And the numbers really show that we are lacking behind other sectors when it comes to women engagement, when it comes to Indigenous engagement, when it comes to Black Canadian engagement, and so on, right? So we have some work ahead of us, regardless of Trump and regardless of who's in power. The joke is there's not enough heterosexual white men to fill all of the jobs that are going to be available in the next 15 to 20 years. And so we have to think about how are we inviting people to enter this sector, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. let's go to I wanted to ask you this actually. Ruvi, you have been able in the past few years to really learn how to navigate your role from a coordinator to a manager to a senior manager to director. And you've done that a lot of times looking like the only one that looks like you in the room. And I wanted to know how that shaped your approach to leadership within Thinkwell Shift, but within the sector in general.
You know what? That's a really good question, Natasha. Thanks for asking. I will say that one of the biggest challenges that I face that someone who doesn't look like me doesn't even think about is I wake up and I realize I'm a Black woman. Most people just wake up and they go about their business, right? They wake up and they like, dude, have a shower. I have to internalize I am Black. I have to internalize things that most people wouldn't. I have to speak a certain way. I have to check my tone. I have to make sure I don't look too angry when I am upset with others. I have to make sure that I speak professionally. There's all these things that come into play as soon as I wake up before I go to work and be like, who am I today? What am I exhibiting today? And that has been a struggle that I have had to navigate personally. It has nothing to do with my coworkers, the environment, nothing, but they wouldn't experience what I experience because they're not who I am. And they don't have that sort of like instant waking up and realizing you are different. So I wake up and I have to think about that before I go into the workplace. What that has done for me is made me be more empathetic to people who are different, whether it's they're different because of disabilities, whether it's different because of cultural background, whatever it is, I'm willing to listen. Of course, there's always one or two people who are just like not nice people in general, regardless of their background, regardless of anything. And some people like that you just can't really communicate with. But what I try to do is ensure that I have a little bit of context as to who I'm communicating with. And that helps me navigate difficult conversations with customers, with youth. I always like to say a story about how when I was an engagement officer, I went into a high school and I was like walked in, did an engagement with grade 10 students. At the end of the day, I'm exhausted. I've talked to 7 classes, and these 5 Black girls ran up to me and they're like, dude, this is how they said it. Dude, oh my gosh. We would have never considered this career or anything around energy because we've never seen anyone who looks like us who's standing and talking about energy efficiency. It's fun. It looks like your job is fun. How could I do it? And that memory has always stood out to me. And that's why I've stuck around in this career because I was like, you know what? You're right. We do not see people who look like me at all working in this industry, in this sector. So I want to make sure youth across the province, Black youth across this province, see people who look like me and relate and say, oh, I don't have to do certain jobs that I thought I had to do. There's so much more out there because you know what? And I'm so grateful to my family. My father and my mother made me believe that I could be anything, do anything, regardless of where I'm from. And that has made me propel in my career. And I want to pass that on to other people to be like, whoever you want to be, you can be. You just got to work hard at it. You got to be willing to learn. You got to put yourself in situations where you have mentors and you take it all in, absorb as much information as possible. And then, unfortunately, like I said, because of who I am, at the end of the day, you got to go home and reflect again. Okay, did I come off correctly today? What could I work on? What more can I do? And it's just what we have to do as people of color. But it does get us into the right rooms. And it's just persistence and consistency and continuously showing up for yourself and not giving up.
Absolutely. Sometimes I hear these ridiculous stereotypes and these myths that are coming right now. Excuse me, this very polarized argument about EDI. And so right now, what you're hearing from the right is this idea that, oh, we're not giving away jobs anymore. You're here if you earn it. And I'm like, excuse me, sir, I would like to know which quote unquote equity seeking minority or person from that particular community that took the job and decided to be half as good as their white male counterpart. I don't know anybody, to be honest, that looks like us that has not taken a job. And because of this internalized chatter from our parents as well, telling us that we always have to be the best, we always have to do better
Mhm.
because we're not going to be given the same amount of opportunities or advantages in this country. I've never met somebody that that comes from any of these groups that have decided, you know what, I'm just going to take it easy. I'm that equity hire. I'm that diversity hire. I'm cool with that. I'm just gonna like sit back right now. I've never in my whole existence of life has ever seen that. Yet it's this big myth that EDI is not sexy anymore, the dollars aren't there. Felipe has a question in the chat, our friend Felipe Philip. He has a question. What would you say, Ruvi, is the best way to make the sector more equitable? What are concrete actions that we can take, that the industry should take, that so that we can make this a better equation?
You know what? I was actually having this conversation with the president of Thinkwell Shift the other day. So random that it's coming up. But I think the number one thing is to have people in HR positions who are not the typical people you should have in HR positions. And what I mean by that is having people who are different in HR positions because we come in with a different perspective. Already, what happens in this sector is in any sector in Canada, there are some biases, some hidden biases that are not coming. Not that anyone means to be biased. It just happens naturally. We all have biases, even if we want to pretend we don't. And when they get that resume with a different name, because you know what? A lot of us are now proud of our names. We're not changing them anymore. So when they get that resume with a different name, it says Ruvi Mugara. They're looking at that name and they're saying, before they even read the resume, before they proceed, they already have a bias about would they be as good or better than the other regular Canadian folks that I'm about to look at. They might read my resume, they might consider it, they might put it on a pile and consider it, but I've already been at a disadvantage. If I was going to get out of 10 in terms of being like, okay, this is the person, I'm already at a 7 just because of my name. So having people who look like us in the room making HR decisions is so helpful. And then they stick around and help with those onboarding things, 30-day check-ins, 60-day check-ins, 90-day check-ins, because culture plays an impact in how someone communicates or how someone works, right? There's a lot of things. If you don't understand someone's background, you don't understand some of the struggles they go through day to day, including in their day-to-day workforce. I've had a conversation with someone else who said, they came to me for advice and they said, you know what? I sent emails to one of my employees. She's from an African background. Her responses are very curt and I don't know how to communicate with her. And I was like, you know what? That's just, we think we're being professional. We think we are doing it. We're like, okay, how do I send this email? I need to sound professional. Meanwhile, it's coming off to you as being curt or not caring. But that's not what she means. And all you need to do is have a conversation. Instead of assuming, sit down and have a conversation, say, hey, I've been sending you all these emails and I get like a negative response back. You will see that is not her intent at all. So having people who are in the HR positions helping with onboarding, as well as not just hiring, is so integral in making sure that more equitable people are in these places in this industry.
Fantastic point, which brings us to a workshop that we had just this past year called Thriving Through Turbulence. And it was inviting folks from energy efficiency and from the energy sector, HR, the heads of HR, so they could come together and we could talk about better hiring, recruitment, and better retention. And if people are looking for skilled candidates, if somebody has studied and done some great stuff in Egypt, and it might not be with the building codes might not match up in the exact way, that's not the most important part of their resume, clearly. That there are
Mhm.
things that we can maneuver, but this is a highly skilled candidate that's actually the more diverse your team, there's been so many statistics and reports, the more diverse a team, the more high performance a team. So our goal
100%.
really, if you want to have a varied, amazing, nuanced perspective to the work that you're doing, then again, it's not the cherry on top of the cake. It should be a part of the recipe and how you're what kind of environment that you are creating. Not diversity for diversity's sake, but for the fact that it
Mhm.
actually works.
Not just checking boxes, but actually bringing people who will bring value to the organization, regardless of background, regardless of, there's different, like you said, there's different skills that we could focus on that make this person be a perfect fit for the organization. Another thing that I would like to add is if that person has the same values or similar values to the values of the organization, high five, like awesome fit, great. So my values align with the values of Thinkwell Shift. And that's why I have made it as long as I have in this organization, because I am accountable. I am dynamic. So think about that. When you're interviewing your candidates, think about your values. Does the person, regardless of their background, do their values match your own values? And you actually make better hiring decisions.
Absolutely well said. Jim said that in the chat. diversity empirically adds value to the bottom line. So do diversity for the business case, if any. Absolutely. There's another question from the chat. There's a couple questions here that I'm going to go to. This one is from Otni. I'm apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. What a great discussion. My question would be, what do you think about the federal government's emissions targets, and do you think they are attainable currently? If not, what actions can the federal government take? Just a
I
small
mean,
little question, Ruby, not as simple.
it's a good question. You know what? I think the federal government has very good goals and they make sense. And a lot of the goals come from research. Research went into all of the things that have come into play about 2030, 2050. It comes from research. On paper, perfect. It's going to work out. On paper, 100% we're going to get there. But what tends to happen with research, it doesn't involve the human and human behavior and all these other things that will impact us getting to our goals. So, not that they're not achievable, it's just that we will not achieve them as quickly as we need to achieve them because of the fact that we're dealing with people and people are messy, regardless of who we are, how much we know about the industry, how much we care about the environment. People altogether, we are messy. It's not one person who's going to impact the 2050 climate change goals. It's not 10 people. It's all of us across the world, not just Canada, not just America, not in Europe, Africa included. And so, because we're working with people, it gets more and more complicated. So, what could the federal government do? Honestly, it's adding more information out there that is accessible to people, not just what is accessible to the people who write it or read it or understand it, to people like you and me who are like, so what are you saying? What do I need to do? How can I do it? Make it simple, make me understand. People who actually want to learn but don't know where to learn. Offering free resources so people can find things online and research, offering community events where people can come and learn, whether it is at a public library, for example, learn about, hey, what are the 2050 goals? What does that even mean? Why are we doing this? Just involving people. Do you know how many people will show up to free events? Is as long as there's like something there, like food or something I'm gonna get, I'm there. I love food. I'm gonna show up. Saves me from cooking. So if more people were showing up at community events where we have the leaders, the people who are in the government telling us what to do, and hiring people who can speak, Thinkwell Shift, plug, shameless plug, like Thinkwell Shift showing up and talking to people in the community, that's how we get there. So once again, not that it's not achievable, it's just that they did not consider all the factors. And once you consider all the factors, it just might take a little more time to get there. We don't give up, however. We focus on the goal, which is we need to impact our environment in a positive way, not only because we want to help the world and the earth stay better, but also because we want people to live longer. You'll be healthier. There's so many health benefits if we just treat our earth better. So that there's so many benefits that people don't even know. Like people don't think energy efficiency links to better health, but there's research that proves that. If people knew, they would care.
Absolutely. Wow. So I vote for Ruby. No, absolutely. I think Ruby, I think, and that's why you're a specialist in communications, right? Because the way you're able to move us so that we can feel this and understand this, I can imagine the kind of work that you do at Thinkwell Shift with all of these amazing communities. Jim James said 100% meet people where they're at. So a lot of people in agreement with you, Ruby, and perhaps they've also felt that a lot of times information was going above their head. We keep changing our targets as well, 2030,
Mhm,
2050. And then depending on where you sit within the sustainable model, those dates also shift. I think this is a pattern that government does. They set the goals. And I think one of the major things that we can do is have more program support and have more funding for services and programs and people that are delivering these kind of programs, because we're
mhm,
finding ourselves like our head is just like going like this because we can't keep track of everything for such a lofty goal. So it's actually unfair to us as well who are working in the sector that we need more tangible support from the government.
mhm.
So Greener Homes Grant. Okay. And so next question from Jessica, our last question from our audience today. I've been asked to speak at my son's school's grade 6 class for their climate and energy science unit. Very cool. I know there are resources online, but do you have any tips for how to make it fun for kids?
Oh, that's so sweet. Yes. I would say, depending on the grade range, kids relate to a lot of activity based presentations. We have learned this through Green Schools. We get a lot of teacher feedback, and youth respond better to when they are a part of the presentation as well. So involve them as much as possible. If you're talking about how much energy does something use? Is it big? Is it small? Is it large? Make them jump up and down like a kangaroo, for example. That's one of the things we do at Green Schools with like grade primary to grade three. We're like, okay, if it doesn't use any energy, we want you to sleep like a sloth and use no energy. If it uses a lot of energy, we want you to jump up and down like a kangaroo. And we show things like a jet, an airplane going by. Does that use a lot of energy or a little bit of energy? And they'll think about it. And then you'll see kids starting to jump around. Some kids are not sure, but it really gets all the kids involved, and they learn better when they can have images that they then ingrain with their behavior. And they're like, I jumped up and down. When they get home to their mom and dad or their family members, they'll be saying, oh my gosh, today I learned about how much energy a airplane uses, and it uses a lot of energy, and they'll be jumping up and down because that's something they've learned. So make sure you integrate a lot about what is the grade range, how have they learned, what have they already learned, and then add some activities to it.
Amazing. I might try that with my daughter today. She's a little bit older, but hey, why not? Let's try it. Thank you so much for your comments, everyone. I also, before we go, I want to ask Ruby one more thing. Also, please, Kelsey, if you can put in the chat a link to our Efficiency Canada's website, where a lot of what we do is trying to make the policy and all the background work and all the stuff that we nerd out about more accessible to the public. So, for those of you, no matter where you're at on your energy efficiency journey, please check that out. We have amazing research team that puts out all the latest and greatest information. So, Ruby, last question. If you could give one piece of advice to someone starting their career in this sector, maybe someone right now has been inspired by this chat and has never been a part of an energy efficiency webinar, what would your advice be for them?
I would say stay curious and don't be afraid to pivot. It's never too late in your career to make a pivot. My career path was not linear, but every experience added to where I am today. If you're passionate about making a difference, keep learning, ask questions, always ask questions, and be open to opportunities, even those outside of your comfort zone. I am not where I am today because I was staying comfortable. I would put my hand up for things I was like, and honestly, at Thinkwell Shift, they just trusted me. So I'll be like, I have no idea what that is, but I think I can learn. If you give me 2 months, I got it. So always put your hand up and be willing to learn. Put yourself outside of your comfort zone. I like to think that even the sudden passing of my mother, that experience also shaped the way I show up at work. So unfortunately, we lost my awesome mother piece in November of last year. And it made me be more empathetic. I've always been someone who's willing to listen to people. But like I said, we all have these biases, and I've put them away now. I just put them away, and I'm more aware of others than ever before. And so trust in who you are. A lot of your experiences have shaped you. They make you who you are, and they are very beneficial in your work life. And you have so much to offer, and it's never too late to try something new.
Ruby, as always, I'm completely in awe of your vulnerability and the power that you have in that, not just in the professional space, but also how you bring in your personal life. And just to also let everyone know, we shot Ruby's Day in the Life in Halifax, or um, not right after, but pretty much after her mother's passing. And how Ruby has, like, everything you've said about carrying on your mother's legacy. I don't know her, I didn't know her, but I can definitely see that in you. The grace, the care, and I think the thing that we need most from our leaders in the sector and even outside this sector is accountability. You keep checking in
Mhm.
with yourself, you keep asking yourself the hard questions, and that's the only way we can do better. And that's the only way this sector can do better. So thank you so much. I can't think of a more deserving person that we could celebrate and launch for Black Futures Month. And the best of luck in everything that you do, Ruby. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.